to see Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him. Why not send a small message or a dua for us to read here in the holy city of Karbala? Whoever's name you put, whatever dua or small message you have, the Morning Baraka team will pass it on to our team here in Karbala, and we will recite the ziyarah, read the message, and broadcast it on Imam Hussein TV3. Send in your names, du'as and small messages to Morning Baraka at Imam Hussein TV, or messages or leave a comment on any of our social media platforms. We look forward to hearing from you, and may Allah and the Ahlul Bayt accept all of our a'mal and our ziyarah, inshallah.
Yes, and welcome back as we kickstart today's program with the recitation of the Holy Quran. And as always, a dear friend of mine and of the channel as well, Sayyid Jalal Ma'soumi. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid Jalal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, Sayyid Jalal, I believe that you're going to be reciting from Surah An-Naba, verses 31 to 46, yes?
Yes, inshallah. Wish you enjoy this recitation, you and dear viewers.
I very much look forward to hearing you, so inshallah, take it away.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic, beautiful, Sayyid Jalal. Really, really appreciate your time. It's so nice to start off the day.
It is. I really do enjoy the mornings with Morning Baraka when we have such a blessed start. And
especially when it's the recitation of the Quran. It's really, really great.
So I hope the viewers are enjoying it as well.
Yeah, so from Quran, we're going to now be focusing on du'as and supplications and how to really speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and here to kind of shed light on some of the supplications and the du'as, or even the ziyaras that we don't really know much about, is Ibrahim Al-Ansari. Ibrahim, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
How are you? Everything okay?
Alhamdulillah, how about yourselves?
Good, thank you. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you very much for having me once again.
Yeah.
So today's a Friday dua.
Yes,
Blessed
inshallah.
Friday dua.
Yeah.
Friday dua, of course, it's a Friday today. A beautiful way to start the day is through supplication, through making a closer bond, a closer connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's whenever we start the day by calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are saying that we are starting the day in your mercy. We are starting the day for you to protect us. It's like, for example, when a young person wakes up and he or she goes to their parents in the morning and kisses them before leaving the house, and kisses them when they come back, and kisses them before they go to sleep. It's the same thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You speak to Him when you wake up, you speak to Him when you're wanting to leave the house, which is because there's du'as for that. You speak to them when you're on a journey, there's du'as for that. You speak to him before you go to sleep, you speak to him. This is the beautiful thing about the school of Ahlul Bayt. There is a dua for every single little action, even for entering the house, for going to the bathroom, for washing, for whatever you may think of. Even in wudu, there are specific du'as for every step in wudu. For washing the face, for washing the arms, for wiping the head, for wiping the feet. And every single one of them is just so beautiful, because the Imams tend to put the supplication in such a way where they include lessons and show us how to live our life, as well as making sure that there is always a special bond between us and the Creator.
And they also show us, don't they, the etiquette of speaking to God. Because I have so many people often saying, well, you know, I just struggle to know how to approach God. This is God. And yet, so even if they're not from the school of Ahlul Bayt, introducing them to the du'as of Ahlul Bayt is a really nice way to sort of break that barrier that people have. And it's a shame that that exists in people, because God is, you know, He says, I'm closer to you than your jugular vein. So to build that relationship is so important, isn't it?
No, definitely. The thing is, any important person, there's always a difference in the way you speak to anyone. Be it your son, your daughter, be it your brother, sister, your parents, your uncles, your grandfather, and then there's the highest. There's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when we speak to Him, once there is speaking with respect, and once there is speaking while being taught from the best, there's a difference. Because once I think I am respectful in the way I am speaking, just because this is how I have grown up, for example. I have been told that this is okay. As we know, the same way I can speak, for example, in my Arab culture, if I go to a different culture and speak the way I do at home, they might find it rude. Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam are the closest to the culture, let's say, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they tell us exactly how to address Him Almighty.
Beautifully said.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا أمير المؤمنين وأبناءه المعصومين حجج الله الله عليهم أجمعين. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
This is a Friday dua, but because it's a Friday, I'd really like you to recite it, and then perhaps we can talk about what it means. And
Inshallah,
yeah,
definitely. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله الأول قبل الإنشاء والإحياء، والآخر بعد فناء الأشياء، العليم الذي لا ينسى من ذكره، لا ينسى من ذكره، ولا ينقص من شكره، ولا يخيب من دعاه، ولا يقطع رجاء من رجاه. اللهم إني أشهدك وكفى بك شهيدا، وأشهد جميع ملائكتك وسكان سماواتك وحملة عرشك ومن بعثت من أنبيائك ورسلك وأنشأت من أصناف خلقك، إني أشهد أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك ولا عديل ولا خلف لقولك ولا تبديل، وأن محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله عبدك ورسولك، أدى ما حملته إلى العباد وجاهد في الله عز وجل حق الجهاد، وأنه بشر بما هو حق من الثواب وأنذر بما هو صدق من العقاب. اللهم ثبتني على دينك ما أحييتني ولا تزغ قلبي بعد إذ هديتني وهب لي من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. صل على محمد وآل محمد واجعلني من أتباعه وشيعته واحشرني في زمرته ووفقني لأداء فرض الجمعات وما أوجبت علي فيها من الطاعات وقسمت لأهلها من العطاء في يوم الجزاء إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you.
Fantastic, brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Is this the whole Friday dua? or
This is
an
the whole
extra?
Friday dua. One of the beauties of these daily duas is that they're all short and concise
Yeah.
and easy to read. And every single day of the week has a dua like this, as well as a ziyarah. So,
Ziyarah of whom now?
so on Fridays, Friday is the day of Imam al-Mahdi. So on a Friday we perform ziyarah. This is a specific ziyarah for Friday, is the ziyarah of Imam al-Mahdi. This dua itself is from Imam al-Sajjad, alayhi afdal salatu wassalam. And in this dua, he starts off with tawheed. He starts off with talking about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he moves on to his belief in Muhammad. Because our religion stands on two: the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the belief in his messenger. Of course, there's the Quran and there's everything else. However, in terms of the shahada itself, so he's performing his shahada, and then after which he goes back to making dua for himself. Oh Allah, do not allow me to go astray. Oh Allah, make me stay steadfast on this religion. And then of course he moves back, because the result of being steadfast is to be of those who follow Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his true message, which leads us to the Imams.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. And in terms of, because it's really fascinating to know that there's a dua or a supplication for every single day.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's more, like there's a specific dua and a ziyarah for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes. So there is the ziyarah, for example, of Monday, which we've been through, is actually for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, because it is their day. And then you have a dua for that day as well. On Tuesday, there's a dua and there's a ziyarah. On Wednesday, etc., for every single day. And like I said at the start of this episode, that it is always about, when waking up, you're making that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Exactly.
You're telling him, I am going to start my day at your mercy, with your blessings, and this is how I want to start today.
But don't you think there's already, for example, dua al-sabah that takes care of that specific need in the morning? Why the need to do dua al-sabah and then dua this and then ziyarah this and then dua that? It seems to be a lot.
You see, with dua al-sabah, for example, dua al-sabah, as beautiful as it is called dua al-sabah, the dua of the morning. Inshallah, maybe if we get the chance to go through it on one of the episodes. It is the recommended time is actually after Salatul Fajr. And inshallah we'll get into detail if we have an episode on that. Whereas this Friday dua, there is no recommended time for it. Doesn't say do it in the morning. Doesn't say do it in the afternoon. This is a general dua for the day. I said it is best to kickstart your day like this because of the beauty of it, because of mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your mornings. So many of us, especially living in the West, we wake up for Salatul Fajr, then we have another 1 or 2 hours of sleep before we head off to work, school, whatever it may be. So maybe dua al-sabah one can recite after Salatul Fajr. Then once you're waking up and you're ready to go to your normal
Routine.
we can recite this dua as an example.
I mean, you could be on the train, couldn't you, commuting somewhere, and
Yeah.
you could be
Definitely.
reading that. So
Definitely.
it's a beautiful way to start the day, because actually I was thinking that not everyone has that time, and if you feel overwhelmed, and even if you get a couple of these in the week, Friday is obviously the day that is blessed for Muslims, and it would be beautiful to start at some point to recite this.
Yes.
But again, it's as much as we can do, isn't it? Obviously a lot of people have busy schedules, so not to feel overwhelmed that I'm not getting the list of du'as done.
No, of course. You see with du'as, they're not wajib.
Yeah.
Du'as are mustahab. They're recommended. They're favorable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we cannot get them in, then we can't.
Yeah.
But if we can, there's unbelievable amounts of blessings. Therefore, there is no wajib act to it. But to get these kinds of blessings, to allow your soul to overlook such beautiful words, to make, you see, with these du'as, there are unbelievable amounts of blessings. And I know I keep repeating that sentence, but it's the truth of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, I just learned about Tawheed. Hey, when I first started reading the du'a, after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I know that He is the first. Like here it says, الأول قبل الإنشاء والإحياء. And then الآخر بعد فناء الأشياء, and who shall continue to exist after all things have perished. Now, these are lessons for me. This is me. This is the Imam teaching me about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then it carries on, العليم الذي لا ينسى من ذكره. The all-knowing, the one who will not forget, the one who remembers Him. And here we're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Imam is telling us that part of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that if you remember Him, He will never forget you.
Yeah. Excellent. And I was just going to say, it makes such a difference to someone's day if you start it off by actually connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by just as simple as dua as this. It makes a major difference to the rest of your day. A lot of people, again, you're right, they get so embroiled with the hustle and bustle of the world and the commuting and everything. They're probably watching a series or maybe listening to something or whatever it is on the way to work, or even thinking too much about work. But if you just want to take a step back, it's a morning, it's still dark, especially in the UK.
Yeah.
It's still dark. You leave the house, I don't know, it depends on what time you guys leave the house. I leave around 7 a.m. So it's still dark.
It's
about
dark at the
8
moment,
by
isn't it?
7:40,
Yeah.
7:50 the lights out. So depending on, it's even better if you leave at 8 a.m. because the sun is just rising. And to have that special feeling of just reciting a small dua, it makes a massive difference to someone's day.
I think it's
brilliant.
centralizing your thought process, isn't it? To always go about your day remembering God, because it's not that He's absent and only at the times of prayer we think about Allah. It's like you're saying, even you see the sun, those signs of creation could be metaphors for who you resonate with. Maybe you think of the Imam at that time, that inshallah He's shining His light on our lives, and there's little things that you can really connect to. And obviously this dua it's a beautiful dua, genuinely. To start it's the start of the week, it's the start of the Friday. So
having these du'as and always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially because throughout our day we go through different kinds of trials. Like some of them is seeing haram, listening haram, being around haram. Now, so having this constant God consciousness, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly, that will always help us by refraining our eyesight, our hearing from these haram acts. And that is the best way to get to a word that we call taqwa. And taqwa is the only way that we can get the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, inna akramakum inda Allah atqakum.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to recap, with your permission, Zahra. I've taken
ahead.
notes. Just to recap.
I wouldn't want to deny you.
Yeah.
After all the effort.
it's my special moment of the segment. So the dua that you chosen was Friday dua. It's actually called Dua Jum'ah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So
Dua Yawm al-Jum'ah.
Dua Yawm al-Jum'ah. So the dua of Friday.
Yeah.
Narrated by Imam Sajjad.
Yeah.
So it first starts off with Tawheed.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to him testifying to the oneness of God and that Muhammad is the messenger.
Yeah.
His grandfather is the messenger. But then it goes on to praying for himself.
Yeah.
So then he asks, what were the words? I know it down. Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad. ولا تزغ قلبي بعد إذ هديتني وهب لي من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب, for example. Yeah. So it goes on to praying for himself. And something that you mentioned as a key takeaway, I think, from what you guys were having discussion about in the beginning of the program, was these are ways to speak to God. But you were saying that this is, speaking to God from the way of the Ahlul Bayt spoke to God, and that's the most perfect way of speaking to God. I think I've brought everything together. I
think that's about it.
That's about it, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add?
No.
No?
I think we need to move on to our...
Brilliant. Ibrahim, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
God bless you on this day.
And inshallah, likewise to both of you.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah. So after the break, we're going to be joined, or Zahra is going to be joined by Baraka Hussein, who's a psychologist and a counsellor, and it's going to be in the specialist segment, so please stay tuned.
Imam Hussein Media Group is a virtual university that works on a global scale to spread the true message of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. Imam Hussein TV was established 10 years ago in the city of Isfahan, Iran. We work to cover all aspects of religion, Islamic jurisprudence, politics, philosophy and many more, and aim to bring the public's attention to the righteous Islamic sect, Shia Islam. Our ultimate goal as a media group is to convey the interpretations of the Holy Quran as well as the traditions and knowledge of the Holy Prophet and his progeny, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon them. Our objectives are to protect and safeguard the Shia youth from the destructive impact of immoral ideologies, standing up against injustice by documenting the oppression of Shia across the globe, as well as encouraging peace and unity amongst the Muslims. To reach our aims and serve the Muslim Ummah, we require a budget that would cover all the expenses for our productions, allowing us to work on different projects. Imam Hussein Media Group is a crowd-funded project. We have no sales nor do we charge for our services. We solely rely on monthly payments, financial contributions, donations, religious alms and generous gifts. The expenses of each production varies depending on the type of project and the style of filming. There are many elements to a production that requires time and capital. The producer must analyze the costs of the venue hire, equipment, transport, feature fees, set design, staff support and further additional costs. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, narrated, "The best of people is he from whom people benefit." It is up to you to help the Muslim Ummah come together and help guide the youth in remaining on the correct path of Islam. To take part in this global conquest and to spread the message of Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him, please visit www.imamhussein3.tv or give us a call on +44 0203 515 0199. You can also contact us via WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS, or even email us on donate@imamhussein.tv. Let's work together hand in hand to elevate the faith of our Shia youth today.
Welcome back, dear viewers of Imam Hussein TV. We just heard a beautiful recitation from Brother Ibrahim with the Jummah prayers, so hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. So now in this segment we're going to be talking about something a bit different, something more practical, and something that's been more in the news, and things that in the community we've been trying to remove stigma, and a lot of work has been going on. So in these days we're going to be discussing with a special guest about mental health, about things that affect us, as I said, loneliness, things that people around us, ourselves, could be affected by, and that could be self-harm, suicidal thoughts. So I do hope that in the future, in the weeks ahead, you will be joining us. So to talk about these issues, I'd like to warmly welcome a guest from Canada, Sister Baraka Hussein, who is a psychotherapist and also a Muslim counsellor. So please welcome. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Baraka.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, yourself?
Thank you, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to these topics. So we've got yourself and we've got Brother Bilal on other mornings as well. So in terms of the topics that we'll be discussing, and today's is about loneliness. And coming from a community, very community-based, aren't we? So perhaps people don't often think about those that could be lonely, and how it affects sort of the. So we're going to be starting with topics that are sort of, perhaps we can be quite dismissive and think, oh, what's loneliness? We've got family around us. And there are people in our community that are isolated, and it could develop into sort of more serious things. So really want to delve into, a perspective from an expert about how would you describe somebody who's feeling loneliness? Because we all feel that pang in a day sometimes, or in a week, and a month, or a year. But what's something that you'd categorise as something that's, affecting someone's life?
Well, it has to do with our overall mental health, and it's always good to have an understanding of what mental health is versus mental illness. We all have mental health, just like physical health, right? So it's that balance of everything in our life, whether it's our social aspect, our spiritual, financial, physical. So when it's all in balance, that means you've got good mental health. Right. When you don't take care of your mental health properly, so you're not eating well, sleeping well, exercise, or these things are off, it could potentially lead to mental illnesses, which could trigger, could lead to stress, which then could trigger potentially anxiety, depression, loneliness, and a series of other challenges. So not necessarily illnesses, like loneliness is not defined as an illness, but it could be a result of poor mental health or poor social connections. Could be people who are, for example, I work a lot with international students, so international students who come from abroad, students living in other cities coming to where we are, and so it'd be hard to adjust, to connect, new social connections, a whole different environment around them, and so they could experience loneliness in that way, right? Everything is new for them. It's hard to make new friends. It could also be you living in your own city. Perhaps you don't have strong ties with families or friends. It's hard for you to make connections with people, and you could experience that lack of social connection, which can lead to that lonely feeling.
Do you think that loneliness, in terms of, so we focus on sort of our community, what we can do as a community to sort of, help people that perhaps, should they be coming forward and saying, I need help, or I would like some, participate in activities, or is there something that we should be looking out as individuals, thinking, oh, I know that X, Y, her family's moved, her husband's passed away, his wife,
Absolutely, and it's about that awareness, right? Like you just said, somebody who's just had a member of their family pass on, or they're new, or something big has happened in their lives. So it's good to offer that social support. And as a community, and especially leaders in the community and centers, you want to be able to have that awareness there, so that you can reach out, have committees, welcoming committees, have youth committees, ladies committees, young men committees, so that you can draw in people, bring in people. Let's say people come to events, to majalis, and then you always see that odd person sitting in the back, not talking, not connecting. It's really important that you reach out and connect to these people. Converts, reverts, they experience a lot of loneliness, especially in Ramadan, Eid time, because they can't celebrate or participate with family events during these special times, right? So it's really important as a community that we do reach out that way and connect. Now, somebody who is experiencing loneliness, let's say they do come in session to see me, they could display symptoms related to depression, sadness, isolation. They could be highly anxious in terms of social anxiety, hard, it makes them very nervous, and it causes them a lot of nerve-wracking thoughts to go and talk to people, because they're so worried about judgment. They're so worried about, what are others going to think of them? And so that will prevent them from going to connect with people. They will display physical symptoms of anxiety. So, heart racing, palpitations, shaking.
How soon? So they're quite. When you think about loneliness, you think, okay, because obviously we all sort of experience it, like I said in the beginning. But so these kind of symptoms, they're quite. Are they things that prolonged loneliness have caused, or is that something that? How soon will you see somebody that is saying, well, I don't feel good. I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like meeting people.
It could be either or. Some of the root causes of loneliness could be depression, could be anxiety. With depression, it could be people exhibiting symptoms of, lack of care of hygiene, loss of interest in activities that they once were participating in. not doing well in school, not attending classes, not going to work, and just withdrawing from people. And so that could be a cause of that, or it could be that loneliness causes depression, right? Because when you are lonely, you're away from and isolated, right? So that isolation could lead to that. The flip side is anxiety as well. You could be lonely because of social anxiety. You are afraid of going to connect with people, going out, and the social anxiety is quite debilitating, right? People are afraid of what others are going to think of them, hence they will stay. They won't go to centers, majalis, school, work. It becomes very debilitating that way. Now, in terms of prolonging, and how soon, I mean, the sooner people get in to come talk to a therapist because they're experiencing, let's say, sadness, or they're experiencing anxiety or loneliness, then we can try and figure out what is the root cause, and then figure out some kind of treatment plan to help. So I've had students come in, especially international students. It becomes really hard for them to engage in a new environment with a new culture, a new language, and expectations of how to make friends, because it's different in different cultures. Absolutely. So these students, we try to have mentorship programs, especially international student services. They would have programs for students to go and get to know the city, where you can go shopping. They'll have different social activities for other international students to connect. So, I mean, most universities would have these types of programs and to help students integrate better and connect and build that social connection. And then we start teaching people how to make friends in a different culture. So this is specific to international students, but in general, the clients I see who experience this is because, let's say, they didn't learn the proper social skills growing up, involved with emotional intelligence per se. So learning how, you know, referring to how you feel and how you respond to others' emotions and whatnot. So that becomes really hard for them to detect, you know, how do I behave? Some you know, clients have autistic tendencies. So that becomes really challenging for them to connect with others because of social challenges there as well.
So you basically will meet somebody and then obviously case by case give them that advice, and so it wouldn't be one size fits all.
Absolutely
deep
not.
dive. Don't, you know, just
no,
put yourself out there.
Everybody's different. Everybody has their own struggles, and so it really depends on, first of all, where the client is as well. Everyone's got their own pace in terms of where they are in that moment. Some people may not be ready to take on, all right, let's do this plan where you're going to go to a center where there's an event, you're going to go introduce yourself, or go to the organizers. That can be really challenging for somebody. Somebody who's experiencing social anxiety, which is why they're lonely per se. So we go step by step. I usually start off, because I work in a university setting. Well, why don't we take a look at the local Muslim group, or another group or society that is of interest to you, perhaps sports, perhaps video gaming, perhaps fashion, perhaps travel. And so there you are more likely to meet people who have the same interests, which makes it easier for you to connect to somebody if there's the same interest there.
It's such a vast topic, because I was just thinking about introverts and extroverts.
Yes.
And you've got that kind of, and I often read, you know, I'll see things on social media where they say about introverts, and we really don't like to be, you know, it's easier to be an extrovert than an introvert in society, because people are, oh, that person keeps to themselves. But that could be their own comfort zone, right? So that's fine, isn't it, to be an introvert?
I mean, introverts can still engage and connect with people. However, how do they draw their energy afterwards is by being alone. Now, there's a difference between being alone and lonely. Because an introvert will rejuvenate through being alone, through having that alone time to stimulate themselves again, whereas extroverts need the social drama, social activity per se, and interaction. That's where they draw their energy from. So there's a huge distinction between loneliness and being alone. For example, you could be in a relationship with somebody, okay, in a marriage, and could be very lonely. Because you don't have any intimacy, physical or emotional, with this person. There's no connection. You don't do things together. Each person's on their phone or on the, you know, watching TV.
I've had married friends saying that to me, that, you know, you don't understand what it's like to be in a marriage and you're alone, and thank goodness, you don't imagine that, because you think you're married, you know, there's someone always there. But, you know, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
no, not at all.
It's interesting that it's quite so relevant in our day to day. And yeah, so what would you say to somebody who's in that situation?
Well, I always say go to couples counseling.
Okay.
Not right away.
No.
I mean, if that person comes to see me alone, then we look at strategies how to build the relationship, how to reconnect. I mean, if it was an arranged marriage, chances are a little bit more challenging. Let's say if it was a love marriage where you knew this person before. But it really depends case by case. But we try to work on building things of interest, things that you could do together, especially from a religious, spiritual aspect in terms of doing things together, du'as, you know, prayers.
I mean, we're literally out of time. I think we've got about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is that I've always wondered that can you solely connect on tick box of du'as and Quran, because there's a social element to us, isn't there, that you have to get on as human beings, and that is, you know, what do you find amusing, what do you find interesting, you know, and all those things to match up with a person. Perhaps everything isn't in a spouse then, you know, is it our expectation? And I don't know, but
they're part of your journey. They may not necessarily be your journey, right? So it all depends how you choose to connect, how you, what you can do to work on yourself. It is about self-development as well. Like you're saying, an introvert would be harder for them, but if they want to do it, there are certain steps. And therapy can also help with that, to find the social skills to work and get yourself out of loneliness. I see a lot of people who come to therapy to talk to someone because they are lonely. For long-term type of counseling, and that can happen.
It's so sad because we haven't even touched about elderly people that are lonely, and that's a massive thing. And again, it's these topics, and there's never have enough time to justify sort of, and again, your expertise. And I'm sure there's lots of people who have different scenarios in their life that may be affecting them. But if people wanted to get in touch with you, just for more information, where can they reach you?
Through social media. You can try the Muslim Counselor on Instagram and Facebook. Here in London, you have a great resource called the Muslim Youth Helpline. They're also accessible on social media, and they have counselors you can talk to who understand the Muslim culture and the variety of cultures that subcultures that we do have, and they can also provide resources to connect with if people are struggling with a variety of mental health issues.
Thank you so much. Well, if you know, as a female, you may feel that you want to connect to somebody that's, you know, amiable and you know, approachable, then obviously Sister Baraka Hussein is on social media. It's the Muslim Counselor, so do look her up. Thank you so much. We'll meet you another morning, inshallah, and have a lovely day.
You too.
And dear viewers, we are now heading to, let me just check, Dr. Yasir Madani, who's going to be talking about the lungs and its function.
Caught for raping English girls. Remember? You're here defending the paedophile. I'm here defending your dad. Women are here defending the paedophile. You're here defending.
We don't need a TV channel because we've got mosques.
We have Islamic centres that are always open.
We have schools teaching Islam.
Hijab is part of a school uniform.
Islam has come and it's established here in the West.
And everyone's happy.
They love us, our food,
our fashion,
our culture.
The media is always on our side.
We've got plenty of English speakers, plenty of English books,
and plenty of places to go and learn in the English language.
Let's be real.
Let's get active. Be more involved.
www.imamhusseinfree.tv.
Welcome back, dear viewers of Morning Baraka. Kind of really continuing the health and wellness discussions. We're going to be focusing more on the human body now, in particular the lungs, because a lot of times we kind of focus on the heart, the mind, or the brain, the stomach, but actually when it comes to the lungs and the functions of the lungs, what more do we need to know? What really do we need to know about the lungs for us to be well informed about this particular area? Luckily, we have with us a dear friend of the channel, but also an expert in this field, Dr. Sayyid Yasir Madani. We are very, very grateful to have you on the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
How's things? You okay?
Alhamdulillah.
Brilliant.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So the theme through this series is going to be focusing on the lungs.
Sure.
And really, I suppose people don't really, it's, as Ali was saying, we don't really focus on so much. We're always thinking about the heart, the brain. Really from a sort of a basic level for, you know, obviously you're a medic, most of us are, you know, non-clinical. So what's the functions of what's the important functions of the lungs for us to sort of learn from?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope the viewers find this useful, inshallah, at home. As you said, we don't focus on the lungs as much as we do, for example, the heart and other parts of the body. Perhaps before we talk about the function of the lungs, maybe if we can talk about the anatomy of the lungs a bit, because that will nicely lead on to how the lungs work, which then sets a precedence for the remainder of the episodes, which is about different lung conditions. And once we've understood a bit about how the lungs work and a bit about the anatomy, then hopefully we understand those conditions a bit better. So we have two lungs, and in fact our viewers can see diagram number 1 on the screen. So as the viewers can see, we have two lungs, one on the right and one on the left. The one on the right has 3 lobes, which essentially are three parts. The lung on the left has 2 lobes, or 2 parts. The reason why the left lung is a bit smaller is because we have the heart on that side as well, on the left side. And then there is a tube, which is the windpipe. The medical word for it is the trachea, and that essentially connects our nose and our mouths to the lungs. So you can actually feel your tube going down the throat. So part of the tube is actually outside the lung, and part of it is inside the lung. And you can the tube is supported by cartilages, which keep it strong and upright. And those cartilages are C-shaped.
And C-shaped around.
Almost like a horseshoe.
And
you can feel them if you press along the front part of your trachea or your windpipe.
Dear viewers, you can feel your
We're finding them.
You can actually feel your trachea. So and then the trachea divides into 2. So the right main bronchus, the left main bronchus, which are the 2 major airways leading into the lungs, the left and the right. And then those airways, those tubes, if you like, the airways is the technical term, the tubes is the lay term, so we'll use tubes or airways interchangeably. They then get smaller and smaller and lead and divide out to different branches, almost like a tree. So our second diagram will show the tree, the tracheobronchial tree. It starts with the trachea, then it goes to the bronchi, the main bronchi, and the bronchi divide, and then they divide into bronchioles, smaller tubes, and those tubes lead to air sacs. So if we can go back to the first diagram, please. The air sacs are the terminal part of those units. They're called alveoli. So the alveoli is a medical term. The air sac is really important, and we'll come back to that. It really is responsible for the main function of the lung, which will answer your question. What is the main function of the lung? So we'll talk about that in a second. And as you can see, under the lungs is a diaphragm. That is a large muscle which divides the thorax, the chest cavity, from the abdominal cavity. Not only does it divide, but its main function is in respiration as well, in breathing. So we'll talk about that shortly. Now, surrounding the lungs, if we can go to diagram number 3, please, is a thin membrane, a thin lining called the pleura. And the membrane that surrounds the lung is called the visceral pleura. And then inside the rib cage, inside the chest wall, there's another membrane, which is the parietal pleura.
When you say membrane, what is it?
So a lining, a very thin lining, extremely thin lining. And those linings, the 2 pleurae, they rub against each other. And when you're breathing in, breathing out, they're rubbing against each other, and there's a lubricant that's produced in that area that will allow them to slide against each other smoothly. Now, there's a cavity, the pleural cavity, between the edge of the lung, the outside of the lung, and the chest wall. And that cavity in normal state, in healthy states, should actually be empty. But in disease states, it's filled with fluid, it fills with blood, with infection, with pus, or with air.
Which affects it
affects the rubbing of the lung, but essentially it has other effects which are more important, which is it compresses the lungs, fluid from outside pushes onto the lungs and compresses them, and it presses on the diaphragm and causes breathlessness, etc. Now, I'm a lung specialist, I'm a respiratory specialist, but my subspecialty is actually in diseases of the pleura. That's my main interest of all the. So we're probably not going to touch on pleural diseases much later on in the next 8 episodes, actually, because they're not as common as other conditions which we'll speak about. And then the other things that are also involved in the respiratory system, in the breathing, are the muscles. So we mentioned the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the major muscle that's involved. And when you breathe in, the diaphragm contracts and pushes down and your tummy goes out. Because the diaphragm is pushing onto the abdominal contents and your tummy goes out. And when you breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes and goes back into a dome-shaped. You know, subhanAllah.
I was just thinking
Are you breathing as he's talking?
Yeah, no. I was just thinking,
he's right.
subhanAllah, like how does
amazing.
Everything just go into place so perfectly?
Amazing. And then the other muscles that are involved in breathing are the intercostal muscles, which are between the two ribs. There's muscles, there's external and internal intercostal muscles. They're involved in breathing as well, breathing in, breathing out. And then all of that is controlled by a respiratory center in the brain. So we have our main brain, which is the cerebrum, and then the part that connects the brain to the spinal cord is called the brainstem. And within the brainstem is the breathing center, and that controls our breathing. So actually our breathing, really, we're not thinking about it, right?
Yeah,
we're just breathing in and out, and actually our brain is controlling it. So that's the anatomy. The lungs, you have the tubes, you have the air sacs. There's tissue around the air sacs, which we can touch upon later. You have the pleura, the lining of the lungs, you have the muscles, and you have the brain. And any of that pathway can be affected and can affect the breathing system. And sometimes more than one of those pathways can be affected.
Brilliant.
And then that's
really
the anatomy. That's the first part done with.
It's very fascinating. I hope the viewers are enjoying this.
Now, as for the physiology means function of the lungs. The main function of the lung is gas transfer. We're breathing in air from the outside. And within air, what we really are breathing in, what we really want, I should say, is oxygen. 21% of air is actually oxygen. Most of it is not oxygen. Most of it is nitrogen and other things.
Wow.
And we're breathing in oxygen, and that oxygen goes through the airways, all that tubes that I just described, and it goes through the tubes and it goes into the air sacs. Now, if we can bring up diagram number 5, I think it is. I think number 5 is the air sacs. The air sacs are surrounded by blood vessels. The red things that you can see are tiny, tiny capillaries, blood vessels. Within the blood vessels is blood, and within that is red blood cells. Within that is the hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin has a high affinity for oxygen. So the oxygen diffuses, if you remember from your GCSE.
It's all coming back right now.
So within the air
rolling
sac
back the years.
is a space, oxygen is there, the oxygen diffuses across the thin membrane that surrounds the air sacs and into the blood vessels and into the red blood cells. It's held by hemoglobin, and the blood is pumped through to the heart. And the left side of the heart in particular, where the blood, after the blood has become oxygenated by the lungs, and the left side of the heart is more powerful than the right side, because the left side of the heart actually pumps blood throughout the body. You know, against gravity, you know, to your legs, to your limbs, to your brain. With gravity downstream, and against gravity upstream to the brain. So the left side of the heart receives blood from the lungs after it had become oxygenated.
Is there a part of that flow that has more of the blood, the oxygen received? Like, so is it the brain that first gets it?
So all of your body requires oxygen, and it's all relative. You know, certain organs probably require a bit more, etc. But all organs have cells and mitochondria and DNA, etc., and they all need oxygen as part of their normal functioning process to produce energy, to produce ATP, and you need the oxygen to produce energy too.
And it goes without saying, if you limit the amount of oxygen that you breathe in, or if within these functions, the oxygen is kind of being affected, or it's not going to the relevant parts, that's where you get the kind of the conditions and the diseases and all that.
Exactly. So you know, other parts of the body receive less oxygen if your lungs are not working properly. So actually the lungs are very important. The other function of the lung, well, it's part of the gas transfer. We talked about oxygen. In fact, if I can just digress for a second and just share another piece of really interesting fact. These alveoli, these air sacs, there's 300 million of them in your lung.
Wow.
300 million. That's quite amazing. And if you lay these out, all these alveoli, per 2 lungs per person, you lay them out. They're as big as a tennis court.
MashaAllah.
Sitting in your lung. Subhanallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created our lungs in such a way, it's so clever, it's so smart, it's mind-boggling, but it's all about surface area. The more surface area you have, the more you enable gas transfer. it's all about surface area.
Just
and you have.
I don't want to digress, but did the Imams ever refer to this? Do you know?
Gosh, that's an amazing question.
Because we always hear about the Imams like referring to scientific facts, and they have these you know, miracles that they talk about, and then 1,400 years later, everything is just kind of being revealed. Did they kind of relate to this specific part, maybe the lung or the body, or even?
So there is a book. The name escapes me at the moment. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. As you know, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq lived in a time which he was much more open and conducive for him to spread the science of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Because it was the time where the Umayyad Caliphate was falling and the Abbas Khalifa hadn't yet started. So he had a window of opportunity. And he taught many scholars, as you know, he taught many of the big scholars from the Sunni school of thought. And there's, I think, I may be wrong, I hope people don't quote me on this, but Hadith Mufaddal, I think is the name of the book, which is out there, actually can be downloaded from online. And that talks about some amazing facts about the human body. But a lot of the students of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq later on went to become either physicians or scientists or chemists. Again, the name of a particular person who was a chemist escapes me. So I can't remember specific hadith about the lungs though, but there are things. And there are, of course, Tabb al-A'imma, Tabb al-Rasul. There are things that where the Ahlul Bayt and the Holy Prophet ﷺ have spoken about health from a medical point of view. So that's the function, the gas transfer. The other thing is when all that blood is used around the body produces a waste gas, which is carbon dioxide, CO2. Again, it's on the diagram that the viewers can see. The CO2 travels from the rest of the body in the blood vessels into the lungs, into the air sacs, and we breathe it out. Okay?
And this happens in every single breath that we take.
Yeah, every breath we take in and breath we breathe out. That's the major function of the lung. The second function of the lung is protection. Actually, if you think about it, we are exposed to so many things in the environment.
I was just about to say, because you mentioned...
We breathe everything.
Yeah, because you mentioned 21% of the air is oxygen, and technically that's how much that's what we need, is the oxygen. What about the rest of the...
So the rest of the air that we breathe in is fine, but it's all the added stuff, the pollution, the particulate matter, which is tiny little things. All the noxious substances, smoke, dusts, whatever. And there's a group of lung disorders which we describe as occupational lung diseases, which are caused by environmental factors, either organic dusts, so farmers, for example. And these are organic dusts, or inorganic dusts, such as people that work in industrial environments with chemicals or fumes or dusts. And they are exposed to these dusts. For example, asbestos is one of them. We have a lot of them in the UK and the Western world, not so much in the Eastern world, really. But if 9/11, for example, those firefighters that went to 9/11 to rescue people, and especially those that after it had collapsed, they were exposed to so many dusts. A lot of them have actually developed lifelong lung diseases that have actually in many cases led to respiratory failure, and people have died from that because their lung is damaged. So that's just an example. There's so many other examples. Other examples are in wars where people have used uranium and other nuclear weapons and biological weapons, and people have breathed in those chemicals, and that's caused damage to the lungs. So the lung protects us against these things, and the way it does that, again, this is amazing. I think we have another diagram for the viewers, diagram number 6, which will show the lining of the lung inside the tubes. In the lining of the lungs, there's hairs called cilia. And within the lining of the lungs normally produce, in healthy states, produce mucus. And that mucus traps these things that we breathe in that are not healthy to our body. And then the cilia wafted up. They're hairs that beat like that. They waft up that mucus and it comes all the way up to the throat, and we swallow it without knowing.
All right.
So rather than it remaining in the lungs and causing damage.
Okay, but then if we swallow it, where does it go then?
So it's not harmful to our stomachs, it's just, but it's harmful to our lungs, a lot of these things. So it's amazing.
That's amazing. We're nearly towards the end. So as a lung specialist, what was it that drew you towards this sort of this area? Are you still as excited about it when you sort of work in your...
So I remember being a medical student actually. One of my first placements, my first medical placement as a third year medical student. The third year is when we start our clinical, experience as medical students. The first 2 years were mainly in universities and lecture theatres. I remember doing a respiratory rotation, and that's when I started becoming interested in it. I think what drove me to it was the diversity of diseases.
Right.
The acuity versus the chronicity of the conditions. There are some conditions which are very acute, like infections, which we'll talk about, acute asthma, and other things which called acute respiratory failure. And as a respiratory specialist, you can go in there and potentially make a difference to someone's life and save someone's life. Whereas you have some people who have chronic conditions, and a lot of those conditions are irreversible. They cause chronic respiratory failure, and you just support them, those patients, to live with it. And the other spectrum at the same end of those chronic conditions is palliative care, where you're just helping people with their symptoms at the end of life, lung cancers and things like that. So there's so much diversity in different ways, and there's so many different conditions that affect different ethnicities as well within respiratory medicine.
Really?
So you come across a wide variety of people of different ages, patients of different ethnic groups, etc. And the other thing that drives me to it is the practical procedures. I like to do things with my hands, so there's a lot of opportunity for practical procedures within respiratory medicine, where again you can make a difference to people's lives in terms of symptoms and diagnosis and management of their symptoms.
It's amazing. So we've been told you've done quite a bit of work in Iraq for charity and things. So inshallah, in the future episodes, we'd love to catch up and see what you've done and hear about it. I think that's all we've got time. But actually, just one question. You mentioned about the 2 lungs we have. Can we survive on one?
We can survive on one. So there's a procedure or an operation called a pneumonectomy, which means removing of one lung. And normally that's done in lung cancer, where the cancer is so large that you have to remove, or so not necessarily so large, but pressing on such vital structures that you can't get away with removing just a part of the lung. You have to remove the whole lung. And people can survive. Some people can develop breathlessness, depending how healthy the other lung is. If that lung is damaged from emphysema and smoking, then they probably will be breathless. But at least they will survive cancer potentially. So yes, you can. In the same way that you can survive on one kidney, normally, most often you can survive on one kidney.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've got so much to discuss.
Yeah, I've got more questions about that, but
in terms of even keeping the lungs healthy, and inshallah in the future episodes we will discuss those. So thank you so much for today.
No problem.
It's been a fascinating.
I can't wait for the rest of the episodes, to be honest with you. It's a fantastic start. There's a lot to take
Ali's usually chatty, so he's clearly mesmerised by the information. So.
Brilliant. Well, look, just echo the words of Zahra. Thank you so much for your time, Sayed, and we look forward to having you on the following shows. On that note, we are carrying on with the kind of health topic or health vibe within the show today. So brace yourselves. It's going to be quite a challenging show. So hopefully you're relaxed. You've got your tea in your hand. To take in and soak in a lot of the information that's going to be sent towards you. After the break, we're going to have Sayyid Ali Nawab. We're going to be talking about jurisprudence, however, from a mental health perspective. So join us after the break. And of course, we've reached now the kind of the end of the show. I've still got a bit of tea left in my cup, so I think I'm going to enjoy that last bit with our esteemed guest, Sayyid Ali and Nawab, who really appreciate your time. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you, Sayyid? Everything okay?
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, this is the first time that we're honoured to have Sayyid Ali on the show.
Honour is mine.
For the remainder of the episode. So we very much look forward to, again, this last part of the show is to really wind down and look at different random miscellaneous topics within Islam that aren't really covered as much, and to really get a jurisprudential view of this.
Well, actually, I think even in society we have a lot. We obviously go and refer to our books. We have the rulings, but we don't really understand the concept and how to implement them into our daily life. So I think talking about certain issues, whether they're with stigma, whether they're with just clarity, it's good to have a knowledgeable Islamic perspective from the fiqh.
And what are we talking about today?
We are talking about quite a hot topic at the moment, and it's unfortunate, it's mental health. So in the general society, a lot is being improvised and implemented into society to say support and networks, etc. So really from a community perspective, Islamic perspective, of what we can do, what perhaps are the rulings regarding somebody who's got a mental health condition. And I think it impacts just the person or the people around us. So we are a community where obviously we have our centres, we have close family, friends, and it's really to see how we can improve ourselves. So from really a perspective of Islamic ruling, what are the rulings related to mental health and sort of a patient that has this condition?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Imam Hussein TV for organising such a program and touching upon sensitive issues, which unfortunately nowadays, even in our centres and amongst the community members, not being discussed very much. Hence we find certain individuals who are hit with these problems, they're not experienced, or they don't know how to deal or what to do with whether it was family members or friends within their boundaries. When it comes to individuals who suffer from, for example, autism or depression or any kind of mental health, Islam comes and looks at each case individually. As I said, as we were discussing this before with the producer before I came into the show, each case, for example, may be temporary or permanent. Some individuals are born with this condition, or they get it early on into their life from very young age, as we see in the news, in the medical reports on TV, radio, in the newspapers. There are reports of children who get this very early in their life, and they are suffering from it at very serious stages.
Like autism, isn't it?
Like autism. That affects them in their education, in their upbringing, in their livelihood at home. So, as I said, Islam comes and looks at each case individually. Now, we want to concentrate on the period where the individual is expected to practice certain religious acts. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His mercy and beneficence, and that He is the creator that created us. In the hadith says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is His rahmah and His mercy is stronger or closer to the sons of Adam than the mother who gave birth to that child. So Allah Arhamar Rahimin, when He gave you that health, He expected you to, for example, pray 5 times a day. But there are times that you fall ill. You catch a cold or a serious cough, that you fall in bed. Now, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or does Islam come and expect you to practice those acts that you were doing before you became ill, the same way, in the same strength, at the perfect timing as you fall ill? No. There are many traditions and ahadiths by Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that say that, for example, an angel came down. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advised or ordered one of the angels to go down and check out the condition of a mu'min. And the angel came down, noticed that this mu'min, that they usually, in that part of the day, they see him standing in his mihrab praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At that time, on that day, he wasn't there. So he went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said, oh Allah, we did not find that mu'min in his mihrab. What do we do? Do we still write the same thawab that we used to write for him every day? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, the fact that I took away that health from him, which stopped him from practicing that prayer, I expect you to write the same thawab.
Really?
So can I ask you that person, they're asking about the judgment, should they write, the angels, but as human beings, we see somebody, they miss their prayer. Is that almost, so that's a test for that person, they're not well. Is it also a test for the people around them to not perhaps judge them, to, you know, like we shouldn't be sitting there saying, oh look, he's missed his prayer, and you know, are we supposed to show a certain etiquette to the person that's missed their prayer?
Unfortunately, this is a misconception that the people around the individual, when they see him not getting up to a certain act, they start thinking negatively. And Islam comes and says each person, they are responsible of their own acts of worship. And what is our responsibility for being alongside them or being around them is to advise them, to support them. Even for parents, it is said that if they have children at home, they should advise them and support them. For example, for Salat al-Subh or in the afternoon prayers, they should come and advise them and support them. And advise them that if you get up to this act, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. They should keep some reward. But no way, even normal situations, regardless of that person suffering from a mental or a physical disorder, they should not be looked upon negatively. They should be supported very calmly, very nicely, in a nice way. If we come to a conclusion that this person psychologically and physically is not able to commit that act, we should just leave it there.
And
we should not push them.
The beautiful thing is that, you know, as you mentioned in the beginning, is that in the community these things are happening. Naturally, it's happening around the world. You know, like you're saying, autism. It's, you know, they're saying there's a link to childhood vaccinations, whether or not it is. These are issues that, you know, a lot of people it doesn't happen to us. It may happen to someone we know. But the blessing and the positive aspect is that there is a community here to support people. And often in the wider society, people are very lonely and they often don't have that support. So we really do need to utilize that, don't we? So from a community perspective, how would you say we should be doing more, perhaps?
Yes.
You did touch upon, for example, the centres being or should be doing events to highlight these issues.
Yeah, in recent near history, we see the younger generation, because the elder generation, they're stuck to, or they concentrate upon just organizing normal traditional events and programs. But it comes down to the younger generation. Why? Because they grew up in these kind of environments. For example, if they go to school, if they go to colleges and universities, at the workplace, they discuss with their friends and colleagues these situations. So they are more aware. They follow the news, they read the newspapers, they are more aware of these situations. So we see them organizing such events. They should be encouraged. We call upon all the community centers and all the mosques and the Islamic centers to organize more of these events, and we're not saying they should cancel out all the traditional lectures and sermons and eulogies, no, but at least once or twice a month, because the community comes to this community center because they are seeing that they are benefiting from this place. And unfortunately, there are community members who are still afraid, or they are shy to come out and ask and speak about these situations. So it lies upon the community leaders and the community centers to organize and invite in specialists and doctors to actually discuss and put clues on how to combat these kind of issues.
And also, you know, it could be that there could be a mother who's suffering with a child, a spouse. You know, there's so many scenarios in family life that actually maybe a sort of the centre having a support network and saying, you know, come in, drop in, have a cup of tea, come and talk about your problems. Often we could be isolated in the home looking after this child, and you know, or you know, whoever it is in the family. That, I mean, I've got a friend, her son's, you know, he went to law, studied law, graduated, and then was diagnosed with schizophrenia at 22. And that's it, you know, he's now in his 30s, and to see what she's gone through, but that support is not there because the understanding isn't there. So, you know, we can only say certain things as friends, or but it would be nice to have a sort of community to...
Just further, you know, following on from that point you even mentioned as well, sometimes a bit the community members are a bit shy to speak up about these issues because they feel like, as you mentioned previously, like they're afflicted with this because of their lack of faith. And because the elders who are uneducated in this situation, they feel like because the person is missing salah, or the person is, for example, committing acts that are just out of the norm, they feel like, oh, this is because he's not close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he's not close to the Ahlul Bayt. And therefore, when it comes to the community members, they don't want to highlight this issue because they feel like it's a like their upbringing.
Lack of faith.
No, it's the parents' upbringing which has caused them to be like that, and therefore they don't speak about it. That's, by the way, in situations where it's not an extreme. For example, we know if you go to the mosque and someone's sitting there, like, and you clearly see there's a mental health issue. But there are other ones where you mentioned there are small little signals. So, is there anything within the books that can possibly list, or do you know any that could list a list of like signals to indicate that, you know, there could be something wrong here mentally, rather than it's a faith issue?
Of course, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, and generally the books of Ahkam, which I advise the dear viewers, the brothers and sisters, to at least sit down every now and then and go through the Islamic books of jurisprudence, because they can pick up certain points that will help them. And nowadays we see the books of Ahkam is not just the opinion of the alim or the marja. They tend to, as I know and have read, they tend to put in some ayat and riwayat to help the person understand why this alim or this scholar has decided that this should be in such a way. There are cases where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the wise words of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, has revealed to us that a person that starts feeling a bit tired, unwell, they should not force themselves to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or do that certain act the same way they were doing in a normal time. There's a riwayah from one of the Imams alayhim salam, is that if you see yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually down, just pray your prayer and go. Sometimes you pray your prayer, you do tasbihat of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, you recite dua, you recite ziyarat ashura, you recite another supplication from books of dua, you sit down and speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do munajat. But the day that you see you're unwell or spiritually you're down, maybe something had happened that affected your level of spirituality, just leave it there. Pray your prayers. Maybe do tasbihat al-Zahra, pray to Allah that He helps you in your day, and then just go. But the day or the time that you feel, no, I am able to do extra, then do it. Because if you do, if you're feeling down and you do certain acts and you pressure yourself, it's the ruh, it's the spirit, it's the soul. It will feel tired. The spirit also, the soul also feels tired sometimes. So you should not force the soul upon certain acts.
Interesting.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in another riwayah, because we're discussing how people look down negatively on individuals who are suffering from certain illnesses, that the mu'min will come on the day of judgment and they will be given a certain high reward. And he or she will know that I have not committed any acts of good or good deeds in my lifetime for me to deserve this amount of thawab, of good deeds. They will be told that because you fell ill for a week or a month or a good part of your life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decided that you deserve that deed. So that mu'min there and then on the day of judgment would wish that, oh Allah, if I was ill from the beginning until the end of my life, for the thawab that they will get. So here this is, if I can finish this, is that it's encouraging. We should encourage the speakers, the lecturers in the centers, and the ulama. They should always encourage family members and community members to not look down upon certain individuals who go through a specifically health-wise health problem or a difficulty in their life, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them to an extent that they wish that they were in that problem for the rest of their life.
It's very challenging. And what I was going to just say, sorry, that I met a friend who has been ill for about 3 months, and she was feeling so upset that, you know, she said, I pray that this is rewarding, you know, and Allah is, you know, removing the sins from me. It's very difficult when you're in a situation that you're feeling so down and unwell that, you know, is something wrong with me. So that's a beautiful narration to end on, actually. I think we're out of time. But thank you so much. It was really lovely to hear that.
Brilliant. Said, really appreciate your time. This is first of many, hopefully. So I've got a couple more sips left on my tea, so hopefully that will bring up.
Better top you up.
Yeah, that will need to top up for the next episode. But that brings us to a close. Thank you very much for the Sayyid, of course, myself and Zahra. Appreciate your time as well, the dear viewers. And inshallah, we'll see you in the next episode of Morning Baraka. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعن الدائم الأبدي السرمدي على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. We begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praises be to Him. Everlasting and omniscient He is, and we send our peace and blessings upon Muhammad and his holy household, and our everlasting damnation and curses upon their enemies. Ameen. Rabbal Alameen. We congratulate Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, Arwahana lahu al-Fida, our awaited Savior al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar, on the glorious occasion that marks the birth of a Sayyidah Fatimatu Zahra, the Lady of Light, the pure Lady of Light, peace and blessings be upon her, which is celebrated on the 20th of Jumada Athani. And today we have prepared for you a couple of episodes in order to celebrate the birth of Sayyidah Fatimatu Zahra alayhi salam. And we thought that the most appropriate way to celebrate the birth of Her Majesty Sayyidah Fatima alayha afdal salati wassalam is to shed light on some of the names of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. I have prepared something, and this is the schedule that I have planned for you, my dear brothers and sisters, my dearest viewers. And that is the pure names of Fatima alayhi salam. As we know, Fatima alayhi salam has several names. And the names, of course, can be found in our books of tradition, in the reports, the ahadith, of course. But before I reached the name of Fatima, and the name that I wish to focus on in these episodes is the name Zahra specifically. But before I do so, I do also wish to shed light upon naming and how important it is that for our children that we give them appropriate names. And in order to do so, we have to go through a series of steps and answer a series of questions. And of course, the question first we are to ask is, what names are we to give to our children? Especially for us living here in the West, we find that there seems to be this pressure on the Muslims living in the West. This pressure that is constantly being dealt upon the Muslims, that they are to adapt to the Western style of living. And then there's of course this Islamophobia that has been prevailing and that has been going around. And people with names like Ahmad and Muhammad and beautiful names such as Fatima and Zahra and Ruqayya and so on and so forth, you find that new parents today, unfortunately, because of fear, because of propaganda, because of the media, instead of giving their children these blissful and beautiful names, they are giving them names of either known Western names or names of specific maybe characters, or let's say famous actors that